Hey, I'm Jon Toogood from Shihad, and today I'm breaking down our song, Home Again.
Put your clock back for the winter.
I've been into music since I was really young. My parents had Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra. The album I liked that they had was Beatles' Hard Day's Night, and that was the album I smashed. First records I ever bought were Kiss Alive 1, Bob Marley Legend, and Human League Dare. We wanted to be just like Metallica. We wanted to be a band that could travel around the world, tour around the world, play and make records, and that's all we wanted to do. How do you do that? Okay, well, let's just spend every spare bit of time we have rehearsing. And we were super dweebs, dressed terribly, terrible haircuts, but one thing we did do was we just played and got tighter and tighter and tighter, and we'd just say yes to every gig that was offered. And yeah, as soon as we were on stage, it was like, oh yeah, this is where I want to be.
Put your clock back for the winter. She asked when I'll be home again.
So basically, this is a song that literally came out of a jam that Shihad had while we were living in Los Angeles, missing home immensely, and we'd go into a rehearsal studio out in the San Fernando Valley and just jam. I think one day I came up with this part, which is the and that basically runs through the whole song. I'm a massive sucker for seeing what works over one sort of line, trying different chords over the top. So I think I got Phil, our other guitar player, to play that, and then I basically just went, okay, what chords sound good over that? And I think it was... which was basically really, really simple, all the chords you learn when you're first learning guitar. So E, D, A, G. So really simple stuff. We're all massive fans of AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. So this is basically those two bands have a big influence on those chords. The rhythm, boof, boof, ka-um, boof, boof, ka-um, boof, boof, ka-um, which is basically Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. That's what that is. When you get to the chorus, why doesn't everyone join in on that part? But we'll make it meatier by going. And so that's basically it. It's an unusual song to me in that it doesn't really follow the rules of what a radio hit single should be, in the fact that I sing two totally different things in the two choruses. There's only two choruses, and I literally change the words. I wouldn't say that's like hit songwriting best practice, but I think the reason people connected to it was, A, it feels good, the song. It's got momentum, it's got a rhythm to it, but it's also, I'm singing about something that I actually am experiencing, which is being away from home and missing the people I love. And I think it's a universal thing.
Yes, I'm coming home again. Woo!
Another unusual thing I think about this song is when we first recorded the music, we had a boombox in a room, so recording directly to cassette, recording a whole band in a room, and we loud. It just sounded like this big distorted wall, but you could still get the idea of it. I just remember we'd be driving back to LA after the jam and going, shit, check out this vibe, man. It sounds like we're in Led Zeppelin, man. we were all buzzing out on how good it sounded. For me, it was definitely the best jam that we had while we were living there. And I think that gave me a bit of a scare because I was like, I don't want to write something crap over the top of it because it's going to waste this amazing bit of music, you know? Like, so I just put off writing anything because I was scared of screwing it up. I think like a lot of people when they first write, sometimes you just, because you don't know the rules, you just write and you get some really good shit out of not knowing the rules and what you're supposed to be doing. You just do it because that's what you feel like. So I got lucky with, you know, like the first album tune. That was all written straight away. Killjoy was similar. I knew what it was before we even wrote it. Like I could hear it in my head. I could even hear the words. I knew what I was going to say. When it came to the Fish album, which is our third album, I'd written a couple of songs and the music was great, but I thought my lyrics sucked. So I was like, well, I'm just going to throw those bits of music out. I've since learned that just because you write something crap the first time around doesn't mean that bit of music you should throw out. You can actually just like scrap that and rewrite. But back then I had this dumb sort of purist idea that the first thing I wrote was the only thing that was allowed to be on there, which is a really silly way of, and really limiting. So Home Again was written around that time when I was just learning that you could rewrite. But it was before I'd fully stepped into that realm. So I was still in that silly mind frame of going, oh, if I write something crap, that's cool Led Zeppelin jam from LA gone. So I put it off. I left it for about 8 months, almost a year. And then we were in the studio in Tamaki Makaurau, and the band were basically going to me, what about that wicked jam, man? You've got to do something with it. I'm like, yeah. They literally, my bandmates went, right, we're going to lock you in this room, which is the studio. It was in York Street Studios, and they locked me in the office upstairs with that and a bit of paper and that bit of music, and they wouldn't let me out of that room, which sounds pretty abusive, but it worked because I'm super claustrophobic. So I just went, right, I've got to get out of here. So it just made me think, okay, well, I just focused and went, what was I thinking at that time when we were living in LA? Well, I was missing home, you know, like, and it just really took me back to that time listening to that bit of music. And so I just wrote it, and it came in a big stream consciousness, came really quickly. It was probably about 10, 15 minutes. And I pretty much had the whole map of the song done. And then we recorded it, and it became a sort of rock standard in New Zealand, which is not what we were thinking about it as. We were just thinking about like, wow, that'd be fun to play live. Because we came from a pretty heavy background. I remember when we released it, we had some pretty mixed reviews for that song. Like one was, oh, it sounds like a third-rate Psychedelic Furs ripoff, which I sort of, because I really like the Psychedelic Furs, they're cool. But being a third-rate version, that's not so cool. So it's interesting to me how that's ended up being like a standard song. For us, it was always about the live show. It wasn't about radio. It wasn't real. It was about having ammunition to play through big PAs and to make mosh pits happen and to see crowds bounce. It's like an accidental pop song, you know? When I listen to the original version, I always think, oh, well, that's way too slow. And it's always surprising to me that it consistently makes the top, 20 in the rock 2000s, like, because it's like, it's a pretty sedate version of how we play it live now that we've learned how to play it. There is a charm to it because it's obviously one of the first times we've ever played it in the studio, and we captured a vibe. I always think it sounds a bit slow and a bit sedate, but maybe that's why it plays well on radio, because it's not so live. It's like a beast, like it should be. In fact, I like the version on the Pacifier live album better than I do the recorded version of the Fish album. First two albums was about like, well, I want this to be over the top heavy, so I'm going to lay my guitar track down 12 times. This was like, nah, AC/DC, have Malcolm in that speaker and Angus in that speaker. That's what we're going to do. We're going to strip it back to a really straight rock band without any bells and whistles. The weirdest thing about Home Again recording is I think I play a Moog keyboard in the bridge and at the breakdown. just to give it some sort of like lift-off thing. But on a whole, it's so straight. But at that point, we were thinking about songs. We weren't thinking so much about production. Like, that's the thing. It's like, that Fish album's an interesting record. It's like, I know it's some people's favorite Shihad record, and that's probably based on the strength of the songs. But for me, production-wise, I think it misses a beat. It misses how powerful this band is live. Killjoy's like, boom, and Churn's like, boom, and the General Electric's like, boom. But, which is what we're like live. This is not that. I think production-wise is a bit soft. We played with AC/DC early on, right? We supported AC/DC, very lucky. And I think at the first sound check, the Malcolm Young's guitar tech went, come lads, come and have a listen to this. And we stood in front of Malcolm's rig and he just played his Gretsch, and it was like the purest, biggest sound I'd ever heard in my life. It was like the sound of a bell. Then we realized, oh right, this is not even that distorted. It's just really loud. And the distortion comes in how hard he hits it. So we quickly learned, if you want to sound really big, it's not about just turning your gain up to full, because anyone can sound like the God of Thunder. You end up sounding like, having that distortion compresses the sound, it ends up sounding like a bumblebee flying out the window. If you can learn how to hit a guitar when it's clean and loud, you can actually get more dynamic and more boom out of it. It's harder to play when you turn the gain down, harder to play, you have to learn, because if you make a mistake, it's really obvious. But if you can play it tight, it sounds fantastic. You get way more dynamics out of it. I think that was prior to us finding out that an SM7 is actually the microphone I should be using. So I was probably using some sort of Neumann mic that everyone thinks is the shit, but for me it always sounded a bit weird on my voice because I got a real bassy voice. And then later on we worked with Garth Richardson and for the General Electric, and he basically tried me out on every single mic known to studio nerds and said, man, you're an SM7 singer, and I've used that ever since. Because we were so loud, I was always overshooting my notes. I mean, my pitch, I was always sharp. And it took me years to learn to sit back down and be in tune. I can sing, but I hack my way through it. I still consider myself a guitar player that sings. But back then I was like, not a great singer, I couldn't really sing in tune. Don't be afraid to suck. If you set the bar too high, you'll never write anything, because we're all fallible and we're all imperfect, and songwriting is a journey through your own ignorance and your own lack of knowledge, and out of that, sometimes not knowing the rules is great, And so my biggest bit of advice would be just to write and write and write, and then when you think you've got something good, then keep writing from there. A great bit of advice from David Bowie, who I think is one of the best songwriters ever, was like, when you go to write, you should feel uncomfortable. You should be pushing the boundary, pushing yourself, trying things that you're not sure about. It's really important. But I do think doing something over and over again is the only way to get good at it. If you get an offer to play a show, you can play it. If you get a chance to write a song, write.
There you go.